Hey Power Suiters, we've just released the dates for our 2024 Power Sessions in Christchurch, Wellington, Auckland, Melbourne and Sydney. We'd love to meet you in person for our month-long transformative leadership program specifically designed for women. Save your spot at powersuit.com. Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts Nat and Kristen as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
Okay, Kristen, what is something that has a 90% plus failure rate, but that we mostly insist on doing regardless?
I feel like I know the answer to this because we planned this podcast. So I'm going to guess New Year's resolutions.
Correct! The bonus prize goes to you. And it is such a funny psychological thing, isn't it? It's a new year, new me. I feel it. We're definitely feeling it at this time of year where everyone is just like hand over foot clawing to the end of the year for a refresh to start the new year strong. And as part of that, we often do New Year's resolutions. And in the past, it's been things like quitting smoking, eating healthier, exercising more. Post-COVID, it sounds like it's more around mental health and finances and all that sort of stuff. But largely they fail by like 19 days in, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. And so 50% of adults claim to make them, although we think secretly more do. You probably are making them, but unwilling to share what those are for a few reasons. If you fail, protecting yourself, that kind of thing. But less than 10% of us stick with our New Year, New Me goals.
So, do you set New Year's resolutions?
No, I don't. And I'll tell you why.
Tell me why.
Yeah. Because I probably at one point did make them. You'll know that I was working towards a six-pack this year.
Like, you know that I was working towards a six-pack.
That's been by the way, whatever the saying is. I'll explain why I think it failed. And probably years and years and years ago, I did set a New Year's resolution. It probably was a thing way back when. And it didn't work. I didn't stick to it. And what I've learned through this research is the 3 reasons why they failed. And I think my New Year's resolutions of past have fit into 1, if not 2 or 3, all of these categories as to why they failed. So I think I didn't know how to set them to be successful. And thanks to PowerSuit and this podcast, now I do. So the 3 reasons are, we're not considering the why behind them. So the big why. Why are you even doing this? Why do you want to change? Why do you want to go from A to B? The second is we're thinking too big. 6-pack, maybe. That was a little bit stretched too far.
I mean, I was going for a 12-pack, so.
And the third point of why New Year's resolutions fail is we're probably not ready to change. And there's a whole psychological thing and process that we have to go to. So those are the 3 reasons. What about you? Do you set them?
Yep, I love them.
Oh. How goal-orientated of you.
I set really stupid ones. No, I don't set stupid ones. I break all the rules. Yeah, I have all the reasons for failing and generally do fail. My last one was after a year of health issues around all my friends and family. And we'd also gone on this trip a couple of years ago where we flew in a helicopter to the top of a mountain, and it was beautiful, pristine snow, a couple of my friends and I, and it was this incredible transformative day. And so my New Year's resolution this year was fewer hospitals, more helicopters, which felt like a really legit at, midnight, 1 a.m. on the 1st of January 2023 felt perfectly reasonable and achievable.
Can I just point out, and while it's not a helicopter, as you say, that's an interesting way of saying helicopter. Well, it's not a
heli chopper.
Well, it's not a helicopter. You flew on an airplane to a wine region of New Zealand. You tested wines all day yesterday, and then you flew home. Can I just add
It's
that?
actually the day before.
Sorry, Saturday. And it kind of fits in. I'm sorry, but if
I
that's,
know.
yeah. So you kind of made it.
I know. I actually do a great job of living true to my New Year's resolutions. And when we were talking about this podcast, I realized one of the reasons why is that sounds silly and it's very bougie and it's thinking too big. But what it actually means is embrace opportunities and live life big and say yes to really crazy cool things and never sort of settle into a dull and boring life where I sit in front of Netflix a little bit too much. So for me, that was the why behind that New Year's resolution, is actually let's just embrace the good times and try and avoid the bad times a bit. The hospitals, I would say, a bit hit and miss this year, but you can only do so much.
It's just interesting that oftentimes those are, well, I was going to say they're unavoidable, but in fact, we can take care of our bodies and actually prevent a lot of preventable diseases. However, sometimes things are out of our control and we end up in hospitals. Yeah. So that was an interesting New Year's resolution. Shall we chat about, I mean, you started on the why, and I love that you turned your bold vision of yourself on mountaintops and flying in more helicopters into actually it's about boldly saying yes, and when cool things and opportunities and experiences pass you by, adventures I might add. You're a big yes person, which is incredible. I would like to point back to my failure of my why. And back in episode number 27.
Do you have like a mega memory, or did you have that written down?
I just quickly looked it up. Okay. I was like, what was that episode? It was episode number 27, and it was how to make the goals stick. And we have a whole conversation in there about extrinsic and intrinsic. And intrinsic is really what we're trying to get to, is internally, what are these deeply held values and purpose and vision that we have of our lives and how we want to live and how we want to act and show up in the world and the things that we want to accomplish in our lifetimes. And it is personal to us. It is, only comes from the inside of us. It's hugely fulfilling and meaningful. Those are where goals and New Year's resolutions should be formed. However, most of our goals end up being extrinsic, and they come from societal norms of how we should look, how we should act, what we should strive for, that we have to have this type of career over this type of career. My dad
this type of six-pack.
Yeah, this type of stuff. My dad told me I should be running more. And I'm thinking in my head, I should be running more. And then I came to it and I was like, deep down inside, I don't want to run more.
Yeah.
I want to do exercise that fills me with joy and that I get meaning from. And okay, maybe running will get me closer to what I thought was important to me, was a six-pack. But it actually isn't. And ultimately, I didn't stick to my exercise and health regime because really I was like, I don't know. I wear clothes most of the time that hide my stomach. And
she really does. You cannot get this woman in a bikini.
Yeah. And if I had a six-pack, no one would appreciate it anyway.
It's such a waste. What a waste of a six-pack. They should give me one.
What a waste of a six-pack. However, I did get a call from a doctor earlier this year who said, Kristen, you have increased cholesterol. You have high cholesterol. And I knew why. It's because we're eating out all the time.
She pointed at me. I am not living your life. I'm on helicopters, lady.
Exactly. We're eating like fried foods at the top of mountains and with our schmoozing. And I was making poor food choices, and that became a habit. And it took a call from a doctor for me to go, oh, that's intrinsic. Like, I actually don't want heart failure. I want to see my kids get married, and I want
or not, whatever they choose.
Oh yes, sorry. I'm just saying the traditional thing, like when
you want to see your kids get older and do great things in life.
True. Actually, probably neither of them will get married. You're absolutely right. I want to see them living their best lives, and if I have a heart attack, that ain't happening. So this is now my food habits over the last 6 weeks have completely changed, and I don't find it hard because it's intrinsic and it is my why.
Yeah, I love it. And I think hot tip for leaders, this is when you're thinking about why your New Year's resolutions fail, it's often also why people can fail to galvanize teams behind a vision, is often leaders and managers can tell people what to do and instruct them on how and all that sort of stuff. But we've talked about this, and Kristen with her mega memory will point to the right episode. We talked about this, about the importance of selling the vision, the why behind doing something, because when you get people to really believe in something, they're much more likely to follow through and act on it rather than just telling them all the things to do. So great for New Year's resolution and great for leadership in general.
Yeah.
I think the other reason with that why, the reason we fail New Year's resolutions for that is that we don't like, it's not challenge, we don't like that pain or the fear of failure. And that's, again, we've covered this a lot this year, but our brains actively work against us. So if you are setting yourself an audacious goal for the year, your brain is actively working against you because it's fearing failure and it's feeling threatened. And we now know that we don't actually tell the difference between a lion coming at us and a failure coming at us in terms of how our brains respond. So underneath that same banner of failures is that our brains are protecting us from pain, and so they are actively trying to stop us changing a lot of the time.
Well, and equally, not only from failure, but it's of the process of change is actually quite painful. And for me to have to do 100 sit-ups every morning, I actually don't care enough. And
I think
read
Britney used to do 1,000, by the way.
Who did?
Britney Spears. And she had a great set of abs.
Well,
so
I mean, she was showing them off all the time, to be fair.
I know, you could be that person.
I could. But I've read this great sentence. The pain of not changing has to be greater than the pain of changing for us to really change. And I just think of these wild examples of why I'll probably never climb Everest, because the pain involved, well, also, I don't want to die, but the pain of training to do something to reach the top of a mountain, which I traveled in those circles as an athlete when I was younger, and I knew someone who'd gotten to the top of Everest, but for him to have to go through that of being this incredibly fit superhuman, ignoring his family for years, even people that do ultra marathons and what are the big Iron Man and all the Iron Women's, that the sacrifice that has to go into to train for that and the single-mindedness and the focus, I'm like, who can be stuffed? So to me, that is pain, which then dilutes the why.
Dilutes the gain.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
and
like, not
actually,
important
I
enough.
was listening to a good podcast on that this morning. Brody Kane, who's a New Zealand podcaster, was talking about just completing an ultra marathon and how we as a culture, have almost romanticized event after event and extreme physical achievements. And actually, for most of us, which probably takes us to the next point, that we're thinking too big with these things, and that actually the problem that we can create for ourselves is worse than what we might achieve. So that kind of whole, I'm going to run a marathon this year, or I'm going to run 10 marathons this year, you actually might be doing more damage than saying, I'm going to run regularly this year.
Yes.
I mean, apart from me, who believes very strongly in thinking way too big. Well, I was actually thinking we talk often about the vision, and you have to be really clear. In our newsletter last week, we talked a lot about being so clear on your vision, but really adaptable on how you get there. And I'm the same with New Year's resolutions. Like, if I was like, I want a boat, and then mum and dad gave me their old blow-up boat from the 1970s, I've achieved my vision. It may not be what everyone thought it was.
It's true, but it floats. You can sit in it. Well, hopefully it floats. Let's just leave it at that.
We'll find out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. But I think we now know, thanks to all of these behavioral science and all these incredible books coming out, and Power Suit and our philosophy, Atomic Habits and so on and so forth, we now know that in order to achieve something, we have to break it down into lots of small steps. And so we're seeing a lot of examples of that. For example, there's micro learning. If we want it, you no longer have to go in these intensive language courses. You can sign up to something like Duolingo. There's a few of them, and actually in 5 minutes a day, start to learn a new language or get the basics of it. So 5 minutes of pure focus far outweighs this intensive course or this cramming for this exam, in which you kind of walk away and you're so overwhelmed and lock it away and forget it. You're actually forming and creating new habits with simple practices, repeating day after day.
Day after day. And I reckon this ties really tightly to the Power Suit philosophy, right? We are literally anti-thinking too big and creating these big, overwhelming situations that you actually end up impossible to get started on. And we used to talk about this a lot with Hatch, our investing platform, that the concept of investing felt so big that a lot of people would never start. And so we often talked about concepts like breaking the mountain down into molehills. And we were talking about New Year's resolutions earlier, and I think one of the things that really has occurred to me in a power suit style is, why not new month resolutions? If you have a big audacious goal for the year, which I think is an amazing thing to do if you want to, why don't you set a January resolution, then a February one, then a March one that takes you step by step closer to where you want to be? And we've talked before about Richie McCaw, who always said he wanted to be the best All Black in the world. And they actually mapped backwards from that what actions he needed to take. And so if you want to run 12 marathons in a year, if you want to, whatever it is, map that back from 12 months into the future and give yourself one action a month or one goal a month. And that, to me, feels far more power suity, but also, like you said, with behavioral science, much more likely to hit above the 10% success rate.
Yeah, well, because if you wake up and it's this big goal, it ends up being more horrifying than inspiring, because it's like, I don't even know how to take the first step, and it's so daunting. Whereas I know that someone had this real dream to build their dream garden in out front of their house and have this beautiful garden, and it's like, what is even the first step? And you know what she did? She set a timer and for 5 minutes, and she went out and she weeded for 5 minutes, and that was it. And she was so, it was like this weight had been taken off her shoulder. So the next day was 5 minutes of something else, and she just got out there and started to slowly and methodically do a little corner or a little section or a little task every day, and it made that concept of getting this new garden tangible and real in her life in small actions.
I love it. I think my mum did a very similar thing when they were moving from the big 4-bedroom family home they'd lived in for 20 years into an apartment. And can you only imagine, we're also a family of hoarders, so the amount of stuff that they had to get rid of. So she just said every day for a year and a half, because they bought this apartment off the plan, she was going to throw out one thing every day or go through one cupboard. And she just did it. And by the time they moved, it was so much less stressful, because she just sort of chipped away at it over a very long period of time and set a really reasonable task. And I suppose on that, under this banner of thinking too big, is a new concept to you, I believe, but a really, really powerful concept about habit stacking. Do you want to give us an intro on that?
Well, I love that, because we ran a power session in Christchurch. It was our first one a couple weeks ago. What an incredible group of women. And it was so fabulous. And someone introduced this concept, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to stop. And I think I know what this is, but could you explain for those that don't know what it is? And inside I'm thinking, for me, I don't know what it is. That really works, by the way, as a meeting hack. And what it was is, we've got already thousands, hundreds, if not thousands, of existing habits. For me, I have to have a warm cup of coffee, ideally brought to me in bed, every single morning.
Just for those, in case you didn't, what was it? In case you didn't hear that. Could you explain for those who didn't hear that?
Yeah, this morning I lay in bed a little bit longer waiting, and finally I was like, I'll give you the first to get up, damn it. But, you know, everything from, you know, when I shower or when I might walk the dog, like, these are all just habits that I now do automatically and take real pleasure in, particularly the coffee thing. But the habit stacking is now saying, pop another habit that you want to adopt on top of an existing habit. So for example, if I wanted to take up meditation, that would be ridiculous of me to say, just every night before bed, I'm going to meditate. That would be a disaster. Because what am I doing every night? Every night it's something different. I might be watching a show. I might be driving a child. I might be whatever. There's no consistency. However, if I were to say, after every morning coffee, which I know happens every morning, meditate for 3 minutes. I might start at 1. I might build that up to 3. That is habit stacking. That is powerful.
I love it. And I do quite a lot of that as well. I'm very much a fan of efficiency when it comes to cleaning. So I'm the person who gets out of bed in the morning and makes a cup of tea, which I have calculated to be about 6 minutes. 3 minutes to boil the kettle, 3 minutes to brew the tea.
Yes.
So in that 6 minutes, that's my cleaning time in the kitchen, and I just use that, and I just go for it. If I'm having a shower and I want to stay in the shower longer because it's lovely and delightful, that's where I clean the shower while I'm in the shower. So it's just finding those little things that you already enjoy and that you love doing, and then tacking on a thing. I think there's a few other ones like
Love that.
which I need to do more of. I used to only watch my favorite show when I was running on the treadmill. Another one could be during a particular show doing 5 push-ups in the ads or whatever it is that's just a really quick, easy win. And again, that's going against that big reason for failure, which is thinking too big and breaking it right down into something that you actually will succeed at. And we're going on a lot of tangents here, but when you're talking about a 90% failure rate, it's actually, what is it, the definition of crazy is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So these things are really simple changes that you can make to maybe increase your chances of success. Which, on the subject of change, takes us to the third reason for failure, which is we're not always actually ready for it.
No, that's right. There actually is a process that we have to go through before we're psychologically ready to actually make change. Because remember up top, we talked about the pain of not changing has to be greater than the pain of changing to really change. So there has to be some sort of reward associated with it. And there's a process we go through. The first is that we go through something called pre-contemplation. You're just aware that something has to change. For me, a doctor call. Okay, that was like, oh gosh, okay, something has to change. Then there was contemplation. You're thinking about making a change. So you actually have to let yourself go, I think I'm ready for a career change. I think I'm ready to change up how I live or put in some more wellness practices in my life. You're contemplating this. So first of all, you have to be aware of something and be prepared to go through a little bit of pain and new habit forming. Then there's contemplation. There's the preparation. Now you're actually starting to put a plan together to make the change. We gave you a few tips as well on how you might do that. And then finally, there is the action. You make the change. And if you literally can't go straight to action. You actually have to let yourself go through that.
I really like that. And I really like that when you talk about it in context of even tiny actions and habit stacking as well, is in my opinion, you can fast forward some of that. And I was reading an Instagram post from someone who was celebrating a year without drinking any alcohol.
Wow.
And she didn't set about doing a year without alcohol. And if she had, she probably would have failed. But what she did is she took it day by day and agreed to not drink that week or whatever she agreed in her brain. And she just committed to that. And she really paid attention. So it's almost like that contemplation to how she felt every week, and that she was sort of angling for a drink at the end of every week, or learned that she was making excuses in her brain for why she might deserve a drink. And that led her to prepare, because she started to go, oh my goodness, I don't think this is something. And she didn't have a problem with alcohol. She just didn't want it in her life anymore. It gave her a little bit of anxiety, and it didn't help with her sleep. And so I just love that, by actually taking away that big audacious goal and just going, I'm just going to spend a week and I'm going to contemplate and prepare and just really pay attention to whether it's going for a run once a week, or giving up drinking, or doing 100 push-ups, doing 5 push-ups, or whatever it is, getting on one helicopter. And just this is a way that you can actually get yourself ready for change, because you actually trick yourself, because you're feeling the benefits of the change, which will motivate you.
I was going to say that.
Whereas if you set that big audacious goal, it's going to feel all or nothing. And I just really loved that post, because she was just saying all the crazy changes that had happened in her life that she wouldn't have even guessed a year ago, but just the level of, also stuff that we know, which I'm not giving up drinking anytime soon, but mad respect to her. And I just thought that was such a great showcase of the difference.
Well, and you had mentioned that, I suppose, reward really, and we know that habits stick with reward. There's this whole loop of, seeing progress, and then we get that dopamine hit and experience pleasure. And it could be pride, like she clearly would be really proud of herself. She's probably noticing all sorts of rewards as part of it. She's more alert, maybe less brain fog, could be a weight thing. She could be fitting into her clothes differently, all of these rewards. And that is,
I hate to break it to you, Kristen, she already had a 6-pack, so she's fine.
Who is this woman? But yeah, look, the dopamine hit is crucial, because it's that reward loop that we're all craving, and we can't have habits stick or continue to change unless we're getting that kind of hit of pleasure. And tech companies have cottoned on to this, because that is why we get the notifications and we're addicted to our phones and the scrolling, and they put all these tactics in place so that we get those rewards or dopamine hits artificially, effectively, without doing anything. They are the ones controlling
Yes,
our
and I don't know
habits.
if we've talked about it on here before, but that's that concept of dark patterns, the infinite scroll. And I heard the other day the guy who invented the infinite scroll, that concept of you're scrolling Instagram and it never stops, it is purely designed as an addictive thing.
Yeah.
And he regrets inventing it because of the massive impact it's had on the world.
Thanks,
But
buddy.
there's all of these sorts of things, the one click buy, all of these things that are designed to help to stop you thinking and make you do stuff that may not be in your best interest. You can do the same thing in a light habit or a good habit by actually reverse engineering that same process and going, what are the things that give me the rewards that make me want to keep doing something? And you don't get that by setting one big goal at the beginning of the year.
I agree. So we had kind of said, don't set New Year's resolutions up top. Do this instead. I think that's going to be the name of this podcast.
Unless it's a great one like my ones.
What are your ones?
Well, I don't know what my ones for this year are. One year my one was make friends with more people with yachts. Also didn't achieve that, but it was a great
really
goal.
Audacious goals. Do this instead would happen to be reflect, because we've got to get initially to the why of why you want to make a change, so that you're going through that decision-making process in order to prepare for change. But do this instead, reflect. What is it that you want to change and why? Sit with it. Take this holiday season to really sit with it. Get to the meaning in order to get to the motivation.
And if it is something that feels external, like you feel like you should, or you feel like people expect you to,
Get it.
dig a bit deeper, because that will most definitely fail.
Or just let it go.
Yeah, if you're not on board. And then the second one is a mindset shift. And this is sort of the approach we take to Power Suit as well, of small actions and taking an experimental approach to change and realizing that you're going to have to try a whole bunch of different things and see what works and see what doesn't. So if you've got a big audacious goal, go for it, but break it down and think of it more as a year-long experiment where you're going to try a different thing each month and see if it works, or week or day, and see if it works and reflect on it and see if it doesn't. And that's okay. If one thing doesn't work, that doesn't stop it feeling like your whole resolution's off. It's just that one of the experiments didn't work.
Amazing. If you are going to set a resolution, let us know. If you think it is small and manageable enough and you're motivated by it. Or let us know if you're going to reflect. I'll put up a bit of a poll to ask if you're going to reflect this holiday period or not on any 2024 changes. As Nat said, people after COVID are looking at well-being, they're looking at managing finances, and just general health as opposed to weight loss, just general, feeling great about themselves. So again, we would love 5 stars. We would love your reviews and your love. You can hit us up at hello@powersuit.com. And there's some more information on our power sessions in the intro, and look forward to meeting you in person in 2024. Take care.
Bye.